In Colombia, human rights organizations have recorded 57 massacres in 2020 so far. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe officially resigned, clearing the post for his successor, Yoshihide Suga. Sudanese authorities have made an urgent call this Tuesday for the aid of the international community to help contain the crisis triggered by devastating floods. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Laura Palmeiro. In Colombia, human rights organizations have recorded 57 massacres in 2020 so far. More than 200 social leaders have been killed in various rural areas of the country. They noted that at least 500 people were displaced from their communities as a result of clashes between armed groups, mainly in the departments of Antioquia and Córdoba. Faced with this scenario, several social movements will have installed last week a humanitarian camp in front of interagency agencies to intervene in the face of a spiral of national violence.
In the last 3 years, we have had 172 leaders murdered, 17 of them in the current year. In addition, 3 enforced disappearances, 37 arbitrary detentions, and 34 threats. These facts also add to the increased action of paramilitary groups in the areas such as Bajo Cauca, Antioquia del Norte, and of course the metropolitan area.
University students continue to protest in Panama on Tuesday to reject a $91 million budget cut for the country's main university. A group of university students took to the streets for the second week in a row to impose the government decision, while also rejecting statements by the National Budget Director of the Ministry of Economy and Finance, who claimed the budget was increased by 13%. Meanwhile, representatives of the National Education Workers Union have warned of the government's intention to adjust the budgets of public institutions as a solution to current COVID-19-triggered economic crisis, while also highlighting that 80% of Panama's university population studies in public universities. And also in Panama, members of over 500 informal housing settlements have demanded that President Laurentino Cortizo invest in decent homes rather than using public funds to support banks and private business.
Really outraged because we live in a country that honestly there is money. We Panamanians know that there is money in the country, but we see that the money goes only to wealthy people, to people who really do not need it. Meanwhile, we as poor people who live in this country, we live with the anxiety that we have to beg our Panamanians, beg our government for a home. So I don't think it's fair to our President Laurentino Cortizo. Remember us, the humble families who live in the shanty towns. We are Panamanians living there due to necessity.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro announced the resumption of classes on a non-presential basis.
An educational program. Classes begin in Venezuela with the Every Family a School system, the non-presential system, the teleeducation system, education through the internet, distance learning, using all forms of education, mothers, fathers, representatives, students, teachers, professors. On Wednesday, September 16th, the 2020-21 school year starts amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
And the Venezuelan president also denounced attempts by some sector of the Venezuelan opposition to suspend the upcoming parliamentary elections set for December 6.
Ramon Guillermo Valedo is within that group that wants to suspend the elections. It is impossible. The first thing I want to say is that this is impossible. If any date is definitive, fixed, and decisive according to this constitution, it is the date of January 5th, 2021, as an obligation to install a new National Assembly, a new legislative power.
Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez reaffirmed the government's commitment to the payment of holders of bonds issued by the state oil company PDVSA and the Caracas Electricity Company despite the financial sanctions imposed against the country.
The Republic, Petróleos de Venezuela and the Caracas Electricity Company announced a joint conditional offer of hiatus in order to guarantee that investors are not affected by the illegal actions of those who unlawfully hold power in the United States of America.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Governor-General of Barbados, Dame Sandra Mason, has announced the intention of the country to become a republic and remove Britain's Queen Elizabeth as head of state by November 2021, when the Caribbean nation marks the 55th anniversary of its independence.
Barbados' first Prime Minister, the Right Excellent Errol Walton Barrow, cautioned against loitering on colonial premises. That warning is as relevant today as it was in 1966. Having attained independence over half a century ago, our country can be in no doubt about its capacity for self-governance. The time has come to fully leave our colonial past behind. Barbadians want a Barbadian head of state. This is the ultimate statement of confidence in who we are and what we are capable of achieving. Hence, Barbados will take the next logical step towards full sovereignty and become a republic by the time we celebrate our 55th anniversary of independence.
Speaking before the United Nations Human Rights Council this Tuesday, the Cuban charge the first to the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, Lester Delgado, rejected unilateral coercive measures and foreign interference in several countries' domestic affairs, while also highlighting Cuba's support for the Venezuelan and Nicaraguan governments.
We condemn the unilateral coercive measures and the constant threats, among other aggressions, as well as acts of destabilization and interference against several countries. These constitute serious violations of the Charter of the United Nations and international law, and use as justification a manipulated and hypocritical narrative of human rights. We reiterate our invariable solidarity with Venezuela and Nicaragua.
Addressing the fourth edition of the International Women Who Make the Uninspired workshop on Tuesday, the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, Alicia Bárcena, noted that the crisis sparked by the COVID-19 pandemic could mean a setback of more than 10 years in women's participation in the labor market across the region. The Executive Secretary stressed that forecasts indicate a fall in GDP of 9.1% in the Latin American and the Caribbean region, while the unemployment rate will reach 44 million people, with over 2.3 million people in poverty, of which 1.1 million will be women. She also noted the role of the state and public policies to promote a care economy in order to boost post-COVID-19 economic recovery, while highlighting the need for a fiscal pact which redirects resources to investment, job creation, and the digital and financial inclusion of women. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe officially resigned on Tuesday, clearing the post for his successor Yoshihide Suga. The former official and leader of the Liberal Democratic Party announced his resignation in early August after presenting health complications. In this context, Yoshihide Suga, current Chief Cabinet Secretary, will be guaranteed election in Parliament on Wednesday after having the majority of the party's support. European Union officials have reiterated the bloc's willingness to reach a final trade agreement with the United Kingdom, while noting that the UK's internal market bill, which was passed in the lower house on Monday, threatens the negotiations set to begin on September 28th.
The European Union wants to continue the negotiations. We want to get a deal. We want to get a deal which is beneficial for both sides. This would be the best way to arrange our future relations. That's why we will continue to negotiate. The 9th official negotiating round will begin on the 28th of September. But of course, this obstacle needs to be removed. What we are saying is the content of this bill isn't good. We would like to have credibility and trustworthiness restored in this crucial phase of the negotiations, and that's why I consider this bill being so harmful.
The World Tourism Organization has noted an unprecedented 65% fall in international tourist arrivals during the first half of this year, while also highlighting a loss of about $4.6 billion in export revenues from international tourism.
Represents an unprecedented decrease as countries around the world close their borders and introduce travel restrictions in response to the pandemic. According to the UNWTO, the massive drop in international travel translates into a loss of 440 million international arrivals, or about $460 billion in export revenues from international tourism. They've also noted over the recent weeks a growing number of destinations have started to open up again to international tourists. As of early September, 53% of destinations had eased travel restrictions, but many governments remain cautious.
The composition of Spain's judiciary is the same as it was in 2013. It was due to be updated 2 years ago, but the Spanish right wing is blocking the process. We have more in the following report.
The General Council of the Judiciary is the body that decides on the appointment of judges in Spain. It is appointed every 5 years and approved by a 3/5 majority of the Congress of Deputies. This has always meant that the two major parties, the People's Party and the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party, had to agree. Now the People's Party is refusing to renew the judiciary, even though the current council was formed in 2013.
This delay represents a serious anomaly. It is the Constitution itself that sets the duration of the mandate of each council at 5 years, so I am obliged to once again urge the public authorities concerned to renew the institution without further delay.
The current composition of the Council favors the People's Party since it has a greater number of conservative judges. The distribution of different forces in the judiciary has little to do with the actual majority in the current Congress of Deputies, led by a progressive government.
That is why, because you believe that these institutions are yours, you intend to use the judiciary to attack the government, and you are blocking its renewal in the most pathetic way.
The People's Party justifies its move by saying that it does not want to make a judicial pact with the United Weekend coalition. This is causing institutional paralysis in the midst of a huge health and economic crisis.
I offered to depoliticize the election of the Judicial Council and the Public Prosecutor's Office, which was rejected yesterday, but you prefer to hand it over to a party that is accused of going against the king and against justice.
As a strategy to overcome the obstruction, the Socialist Party intends to secure an alternative parliamentary majority, without counting on the People's Party, which it criticizes for its disloyalty to the state.
There is a difference between United Weekend and you, and that is that United Weekend complies with the Constitution. You do not comply with the Constitution. Renew the institutions, pitch in and help Spanish society.
What the rest of the parties inside the Spanish parliament are demanding is a reform of the organic law on the judiciary, as a means to change the way of electing judicial council members, in which the political inclinations of judges do not predominate. The formula for this reform has yet to be specified.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Sudanese authorities have made an urgent call this Tuesday for the aid of the international community to help contain the crisis triggered by devastating floods. The Foreign Minister of Sudan pointed out that the health situation in the country wasn't at its best way, and it is becoming more and more challenging. According to the report by the United Nations, more than 110,000 have been affected by floods in the first week of September, alone amounting a total of 650,000 people affected. According to the government, over 100,000 homes have been damaged or destroyed, and over 100 people have been killed due to the flood waters. Protesters gathered in Algeria's capital, Algiers, to reject an appeal court decision issued this Tuesday, which reduced the sentence of independent Algerian journalist Khaled Drareni for 2 years in prison for incitement to armed gathering, following his coverage of anti-government protests that broke out across the country in February last year.
I think it is abused. Today, injustice is enriched in the courthouse. It is just immoral, unethical. It doesn't bode well for the future of Algeria. It's sad. Today, a journalist who has done his job as a journalist, who has done nothing but transmit the voice of the people, is sentenced to 2 years in prison. What's that? I think today that one can no longer practice journalism in Algeria. In Algeria today, one is only in charge of the regime's communication. This judgment doesn't hurt Khaled Drareni, it hurts the Algerian justice, the executive power, it hurts the Ministry of Justice, it hurts the magistrates and Algeria. We confirm today after this decision that we cannot guarantee freedoms to citizens. We cannot guarantee freedom of the press. We are all in danger today. The press is in danger. Lawyers are in danger. Freedoms are in danger. Algerians are in danger. There is neither legal security nor legal certainty. That is why we will have to win.
The World Health Organization announced on Tuesday that at least 118 Ebola virus cases have been confirmed in the Democratic Republic of the Congo since the latest outbreak in June. Meanwhile, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has calling for a cross-border response to prevent the spread of the virus into the neighboring Republic of the Congo. The World Health Organization Africa Regional Office noted that there had been 48 Ebola-related deaths and 52 recoveries. The 11th Ebola outbreak in the country started in early June in the Equator province and has since spread to 12 of the 17 health zones. More than 25,000 people have been vaccinated, including many frontline health workers. Meanwhile, health authorities have reported over 10,000 COVID-19 cases and 267 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic in the country. Tunisian students returned to school in the capital Tunis on the first day of the new academic year after being introduced to new social distancing measures to protect and limit the spread of the coronavirus. Back to school for children on September 15, following the approval of the health protocol by the Tunisian Scientific Committee for the fight against coronavirus, which calls for the application of social distancing between pupils and the mandatory mask wearing only for teachers and educational staff, as children are at least at risk of infection. The Tunisian government imposed strict coronavirus prevention restrictions shortly after detecting the first national case on March 2nd.
We have taken several exceptional measures due to the health situation. We divided classes based on the recommendations of the Ministry of Education. All classes are divided into 2 groups. A group comes one day and the second groups come on the day after.
Thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators gathered in front of the White House this Tuesday to protest the signing of the U.S. brokered peace agreement between the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Israel.
This is not peace, and it doesn't contribute to any kind of peace. In fact, it emboldens Israel to continue making its moves that are anti-peace. You want peace? Pressure Israel to end its colonial apartheid policies and respect the lives and the right to freedom and dignity of the Palestinian people, then you can have a true peace.
It's very unfair and unjust for my people back in Palestine to get killed every day and have their land stolen, and Trump to just be out here selling people's lives like it's nothing. Like, clearly I'm affected by it. Everybody, like a whole region of people is affected by it. A whole country is being wiped out. It's apartheid, and it's very unfair for my people.
Entity. It's the Palestinians are the ones who are supposed to be in this peace deal, not these guys. This is fake treaty, and it will fail. It will fail. It will fail because it's done by a criminal Netanyahu and bully Trump and hopeless other leaders who've been bullied and brought to the White House. I mean,
it's violent.
And demonstrations were also seen in the city of Nablus in Palestine's occupied West Bank this Tuesday to protest the so-called peace deals with Israel.
It is considered as a free gift and a reward to this occupation that continues with the crimes and arresting our people and the building of settlements. But we are proud as a Palestinian people that we are the spearhead in the face of this Israeli occupation, and we are very happy that we are going to achieve national unity. We are betting on our Arab people and Arab nation, as throughout history the Palestinian cause was its main focus when it comes to the fight against Zionism, which threatens the Arab nation and the entire region, and not just the Palestinian cause. Indeed, we are betting on these people.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Laura Palmeiro. Thank you for watching.